Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce my guest today, Dr. Amanda Crowell. Amanda is a cognitive psychologist, speaker, author, and the creator of the Great Work Journals. Amanda's TEDx talk, 3 Reasons You Aren't Doing What You Say You Will Do, has received more than 1 million views and has been featured on TED's Ideas blog and TED Shorts. Her ideas have also been featured on NPR, Al Jazeera, The Wall Street Journal, Quartz, and Thrive Global. Amanda lives in New Jersey with her husband, 2 adorable kids, and a remarkable newfie poo named Ruthie. She spends her days educating future teachers, coaching accidental entrepreneurs, and speaking about how to make progress on great work to colleges and corporate teams. And let me also say her book, Great Work, Do What Matters Most Without Sacrificing Everything Else, which is in my hot little hands right now, just came out recently and is fabulous. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Amanda Crowell. Welcome.
Thank you. That was such a nice intro. Thank you for mentioning the book. I'm glad you liked it.
I love it. I don't just like it. I love it.
Yay.
When I was a little kid, if I said I love something, they'd say, well, if you love it so much, why don't you marry it? Mm-hmm. Well, I do love it that much. It's a great book.
Wow. So, I'll send you a wedding gift.
But speaking of when you were little, take us back to some of the earlier years, Amanda, and tell us, how some of those formative years might have informed what you're doing today, or maybe not. But I always love to start with people's earlier life and how that might have been somewhat influential in their career trajectory.
Yeah. Well, so I had a childhood that was lovely and complicated, the way I think most people would describe their childhoods. One of the interesting things that happened to me when I was quite small, maybe 2 years old, was that I developed or whatever, a seizure disorder.
Oh, wow.
And so from about the age of 2 till about the age of 9, I was really lucky because my seizure disorder was developmental, meaning that once my brain had stopped growing and could fuse, the seizures would go away. And they knew that from the beginning because it was the particular type of seizures that I had. Yeah. So from the age of about 2 to the age of about 9, I was kind of out of it, because they were protecting my brain. They were giving me these drugs that sort of would keep the seizures at bay, but would make me kind of drifty and hard to pin down. And I remember 3rd grade was the year when it switched. It was 4th grade when I wasn't on the medicine. It was 3rd grade that I was, and they were seriously considering holding me back in 3rd grade because I just couldn't really function in school. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't very socially capable. It's just, it was just by virtue of those drugs. And so when I was out of that phase and sort of woke up into a 9-year-old's life, I remember being kind of perplexed by everything that was happening around me. How did, I did have friends. It wasn't like I was drugged it wasn't so dramatic. It was kind of dramatic, but I had friends and I knew my teachers' names and I was able to watch TV, but I wasn't sharp until I was about 9. And then I was like, what's all this? what's going on with all these people? What are all these social dynamics? What's going on with my parents and my brother? And it was like an interesting sort of like realization. And I became fascinated by why people are the way they are. And particularly, what is it that makes it possible for people to like interact with each other and have good conversations, to be friends? And that was a real area of interest for me. And also, like, what is it? I also had been fascinated from birth throughout all of this in children's educational television, sort of fascinated by how is it that, we can use different media to help kids who maybe struggled for other reasons, like either they were underprivileged or couldn't learn how to read because they were in an impoverished environment, like words impoverished by words and things like that. So anyways, I was just very interested suddenly in like what it is to be human. And that like, and I also often tell people, there's this moment, usually it happens in people's 30s, where you really genuinely 100% realize in a way you hadn't before that you're going to die. And that your time on earth is limited and you better get to it. That's what Erik Erikson would call the shift from intimacy to legacy. But when you have a near-death experience younger than that, you kind of know it earlier. And one of my seizures early on was very, very serious. And I knew that. And I think that played a role in it too. Like I knew in a way that other kids didn't know that health concerns can be very serious. And that you can kind of be very, very derailed. So I took a lot of this figuring out people stuff maybe more seriously even than I needed to.
Yeah.
Because it felt so sort of existential.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of that kind of drove me to when I was going to college. I kind of went to college in like the way that kids from first generation families go to college, which is like someone says, you should go there. And you're like, okay. So
right.
There.
Right.
And then someone you like says you should be this kind of major. And you're like, okay. And fortunately it worked out for me because what I ended up studying in college was communication, but not most communication majors are like marketing or PR or radio or television.
Yeah.
And I did communication theory because even then I was a psychologist at heart, I think. And some of the professors there really helped me develop that understanding of like, what is it that influences how we speak to each other, how we talk to each other, how we negotiate with each other, how we can be together socially in terms of the way we talk to each other. And that feeds very much into my sort of love of children's educational media, which has been a constant the whole time. But when I went on for my master's, I started in a master's program that was about children's educational television, but it was right after undergraduate and it just wasn't the right timing for me. So I did not finish that master's degree and I moved to Boston and moved to the city and I was going to be like a professional girl and got a job and worked that job. And then I realized, I really am still wanting to figure things out. I was working in education because that's always my, area.
What were you doing in education
at that time?
Yeah.
I was doing a couple different things. I started out in a continuing legal education organization because I thought I was going to go to law school.
What? Oh, interesting. What made you think you were going to law school at that point after leaving the master's program?
Well, when I was still in undergraduate, I got a scholarship to do a law school admissions test Kaplan course. And I really liked the LSAT is the truth of the whole thing. The whole thing is that I liked the LSAT. So I just got really high scores from the very beginning. And it just seemed like a really obvious choice for me, from a low-income family. This is like one of those official jobs that people say you're allowed to have. Like you can be a doctor and a lawyer and a teacher and a fireman. Like that's the full professional workforce as you understand it as a child. And that was one of those jobs. So I thought, well, okay, that's what I'll do. But I kept not applying to law school. I didn't apply to law school for my first master's. And then when I was working in continuing legal education, I wasn't like that interested in the kinds of programming that we were providing. I was just doing event planning, but I was doing it around, I don't know, real estate licensure, continuing education credits and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't care about any of this. And then, I just kind of got back to my roots and thought, oh, well, part of what happened that released me from my law school sort of plans was that I realized I could just love the LSAT. And I started teaching the law school admissions test for Kaplan. And I did that for 5 or 7 years, all the way through my master's program, all the way through my PhD. I worked for their national hotline for the law school admissions test. And I never lost my love for it, actually. I still really find it interesting. But never.
The only person I've ever met who said they love the LSAT.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's very fun. I still to this day would probably gladly just play on those LSAT logic games. I just like but it never really grew into wanting to go to law school in any serious way. I was living in Boston, and at one point I decided, okay, fine, I guess I better go to law school. And it felt like this funeral dirge. And I studied for the LSAT and got my got my official high score. And I was like, okay, fine, I guess I'll go to Harvard Law. And it was like a whole thing. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you going to go to Harvard Law School?
I'm laughing just because you're saying oh, I guess I'll go to Harvard Law.
Everyone was like, what are you talking about? If you're not super pumped about this, that is the wrong path. So I really just sort of stopped. I got a different job. I left the MCLE, it was called, the Continuous Legal Education place. And I went and worked for a more traditional education organization where we were working with teachers who were working with struggling students who were struggling to learn how to read. It was still event planning, but I was much more in my element because it was much more about the kind of, struggling student, the real schools, real teachers, real students, real problems. And I felt much closer to the action. And I realized, even when I was interested in children's media, it was always as an alternative pathway to some of the learning that those students don't have access to. Mm-hmm. And I realized okay, this is really where I'm meant to be. And so that's when I applied to and moved from Boston to New York to go to Columbia for my PhD.
Aha. Okay.
Yes. And so I got my PhD in this thing called Cognitive Science for Education. And it's applied cognition program. My master's at Boston College was an applied development program. So applied
development.
Yeah. So both of those are applied programs, which is what really mattered to me, which is you can be two kinds of psychologists. You can be what they would call a pure scientist, or you can be an applied psychologist. You can do the same thing in physics, but it makes more sense in education. So a pure psychologist is we'll do perception research. Let me bring you into a lab, ask you to look at some things, discover what it means to perceive as a human species. Right. And I like that kind of research. I find it interesting, but until it's applied in a context, I don't really care.
It's theory.
Yeah. And, theory is definitely what we use in applied psychology to make things better. But I'm much more interested in how can we use what we already know to make lived experiences better than I am in trying to figure out the things we don't yet know. That's what I learned about myself.
I just wanted to clarify something, but this is very helpful what you're distinguishing in terms of applied. Now, the degree that you got at Boston College was, you said it was applied development. Was that developmental psychology?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Because some of our listeners might.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then the PhD was in applied cognitive psychology.
Yes. So I'm now officially an applied cognitive developmentalist.
Oh, okay. So
which doesn't matter really, but but there, it helps if someone wants to look something. So you're an applied cognitive developmentalist. Yes.
developmentalist psychologist.
Yeah, well, developmentalist has psychology built into it when you're in the field, but you're right, it's not obvious from the outside. So, and that's all of that is basically boils down to applied, meaning how does it play out in schools? Cognitive, meaning what is it we're trying to figure out how it plays out in school? And my very specific area of expertise is how do people change their minds? You change your mind when you learn anything. You go from a mind that didn't know it to a mind that does. And how is it that we do that? But also, how do we change our mind about issues of social importance or issues of personal importance, right? Like if you think of yourself as a person with a particular identity, I'm a heart-centered helper type. Like, how can you go and succeed in a sales job, right? So that's, how do you change your mind about yourself is an area of my interest. And then developmentalist, which is a very important part of that 3-word title, because a lot of people study cognition and they're interested in schools. But there's a philosophical perspective in being a developmentalist, which is to say, no one is ever static. You can always grow and change and get better no matter what's happening for you, no matter how far you feel like you have to go, no matter, what kind of history you've had. And so a developmentalist, like when I'm teaching it to my students, we talk about a psychologist will test you to find out where you are. A developmentalist will test you to find out where you're starting so we can take you where you're going. Always on a trajectory. And when you're a developmentalist, you're always seeing people as constantly growing and changing with the potential to be any number of amazing.
Sure. And, that's very helpful. And then when you talked about cognitive and you said, people think of that as schools, that might be true for people in your areas of specialty or related. I think of as a lay person, even though I did study psychology undergrad, so some of the terms you're using are familiar to me, but I also think of cognitive as just how somebody engages with the world, whether there's stimuli or how they perceive the world around them, how they, if they have certain sensitivities to noises or smells, their senses and how they might, I think about certain people on the people who might, people with autism who might have particular sensitivities to loud noises or, I don't know. I'm just talking about.
No, yeah. Cognitive psychology is very broad. You're talking about neurodiversity, which is a very important part of what. So the reason that I said I think of it as schools is because my particular interest is in, as a society, how do we convey our values and what we think it's important for people to learn and know and be and become, because those are all cultural values and we pass them on often. We pass them on through our families and our culture and our media, but we also largely sort of bequeath that responsibility to schools. And one of the questions that I've wondered about is how effective schools are at doing that. And then what are the media that we can augment and supplement, and how can we change schools to be a little bit more aligned with what we actually value as opposed to what we have historically valued in a sort of industrial economy now that we're in an information economy.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff I think about, but you're absolutely right that cognitive psychology can span everything from straight pure perception all the way through there's social cognition. There's all kinds. There's
language development,
situated cognition, language development. There's math. There's social. Every individual.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
So
very narrowly focused by the time you PhD.
Yeah. I just wanted to sort of clarify that a little bit just for the audience because, but it's helpful to hear the context in which you're describing it.
Mhm.
And
Well, and in part, the reason that's relevant is I've been embedded in schools, and schools are the context towards which a lot of really interesting research is directed. So my TEDx talk, for example, is actually the application of education theory to adult life. So the three mindsets that we talk about, the three reasons you're not doing what you say you'll do, are the truth of those is I was working in a consulting firm and we were helping schools develop the three academic mindsets, which are belonging, value, and growth. Do you believe you can do it? Are you the kind of person who can do it? And do you want to do it? Those are the three. If students can believe they can do it, think they can do it, and want to do it, then you cannot stop them. Kind of no matter what their history is, as long as they have the strategies in place to help them through their struggles, right?
Wow.
So those, at the time, I was going through like a lot of, I just had 2 babies and I was in like a weird spot with my body. And I was like, I've never ever exercised. I wonder if I use these same strategies, could I change my own mind about like this adult thing, this identity I held as a person who doesn't exercise. And the TEDx talk is really about how I went from never, ever exercising to doing a triathlon and a half marathon and like getting much healthier and like really changing my story in a way that those kinds of entrenched problems tend not to change over the course of a lifetime. Like we struggle with the same things over and over. And what I discovered in the applications of these sort of theories is a lot of education theories and ways of looking at the world are very helpful for adults. And that's sort of where it all began and how the coaching began and ultimately resulted in Great Work, the book. Because it's really all like, it's not all education theory. There's other like adult learning theories and sociocultural theories and like lived experience of my own that come into the book. But really it's about, I discovered that my fascination with how people change their minds in schools and through media was really just a fascination with what does it mean to be a thinking, changing, developing human in the world that we've constructed for ourselves? And that's what Great Work is really about, sort of.
Is that all?
That's it. So, there's a little time management, productivity thrown in. But that's where my heart was at as I was writing it.
That's just the question of a lifetime, Amanda.
Exactly. It's been the question of my lifetime.
It's a big question. And so the book then, but what you do with the book is you give people an opportunity to kind of chunk that out and break it down to some degree.
Well, okay. So let me just build the bridge between those two things. So, Great Work is the title of the book because it's a focus on I was writing this book and I thought it was going to be like a fairly straightforward time management book. Because I have these time management journals, the Great Work journals. I've got them for entrepreneurs and regular humans and students.
Because we know entrepreneurs are not regular human.
No, neither really are students. But and so I sort of started being like, people are asking me like, why would they do this? How can they do this? How can they use these time management strategies? And I realized that really what those strategies were aiming at is doing the work that matters the most to you.
Right.
Because like when you said like, oh, that's the question of a lifetime, it's true. And I think it's the insight of a lifetime that transformed a fairly straightforward time management book into this book, Great Work, which is the insight is so much of the world is constructed. So much of what we experience is because we've perceived everything we experience is because we've perceived it. And we can perceive kind of all like a multitude of worlds beyond the one that we perceive. So given that that's true, can we have what we most deeply desire? Can we be more who we really want to be? And that led to questions of how do we know who we really want to be? How can we have the courage if being that person is a little counter to our prior identities or who our parents think we are, who our friends think we are? And then how can we believe in our ability to change and grow over time so that we can become the person we want to be, even because that person is calling to us. What I'd say is it's calling to us from the inside. It's always been there. We've always felt it, but we don't listen to it because we think the world we're perceiving is reality. And when you really realize that you can have lots of worlds, there's only one conclusion, which is if you have the courage and you're willing to put in the time and ask for help, you can do whatever you want to do.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here when you start talking about reaching inside.
I know. I read your book. I was like a bobblehead, just nodding.
Absolutely. And I found your entire book so accessible and so intriguing because you offer so many ways for people to discover or to work with that part of themselves if they haven't already. I was looking through, how to make your great work a reality and the upside down triangle model, where you have people, set a 90-day goal.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you talk about setting goals and having people do everything from starting with a vision, going to do's and tasks. And I really could appreciate the way that you frame that and explain it. And it gives somebody both a way of thinking about things, but then something to do with it.
Yes, exactly. Right.
It's like there's something for the concrete thinker, but then there's something for the dreamer too.
Well, yeah, I think that one of the things I find, right, I like that you articulated those two types of people because they have different frustrations in the world of productivity. The dreamer is often like frustrated because the gap between where they are and where they want to be is so vast. And one of the biggest frustrations for the dreamer is the feeling of like, I have an hour. How am I going to change the face of television in an hour?
Right.
But then that person needs to really work it down through the levels. Okay, I want to change the face of television. In about a year, I feel like I could be maybe writing on a television show. What can I do in the next 90 days? I can figure out what kind of television shows. I can network with people. I can figure out the space. What can I do this week? Well, I can remember that one guy's name that I met at that conference. And so today what I can do is like go stalk him on LinkedIn and Facebook and just kind of research him.
Right.
Now I know what to do to change the face of television in an hour.
Right.
And you see how the connection. And then there's the concrete person who feels frustrated because often when you're very concrete, it's easy to see what to do, but you don't feel like your efforts accumulate ever. And that's partly because they're not sort of directed up through the levels of the triangle. Okay, today I'm going to just ask that guy that question, but really like, why are you doing it? What? And it's not like they're not doing it for reasons that ultimately could make sense, but it's more like, it's like scattershot. Is that a word? Like they're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, right?
Yeah.
But really, if you say, what do you really want, concrete person?
Right.
And they discover, well, I'm not at it. I don't believe it's possible, but there's something about television I really like. Just this recent example. Then it's like, okay, you have all these ideas. Which ones feel like they're going to get you closer to that? Then they can accumulate. You can build some momentum and you can see like, okay, where are you headed in a year? Even very concrete people can kind of sense, what could I really do in a year? And sometimes even if that feels a little abstract, like a little too like wish and a prayer for our concrete friends, 90 days, like I always like to say, like, you could answer the question, could you have dinner with me on the second Tuesday, 3 months from now? You could answer that question because you kind of know what's going to be happening in this month plus 3, right?
Right.
So that feels, I think, for everybody, that's why 90-day goals, I think, are so popular. because you can kind of genuinely imagine what you could do in your real life during that time.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and I love the chapter where you really walk people through that, and you give examples of people walking through their own lives. So it's not just theoretical. This is, you give applied examples, which is great. But there's also great visuals in the book too, so that people can really see what these things mean. Because sometimes you see diagrams and you think, well, how would that be applied, or how would that work out? So I really appreciate that. And you don't just show it once, you show it throughout the chapter in many iterations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chapter has an upside down triangle in it too.
Yes. And then you take us through the self-expertise development process, another great visual. And I think that's an important piece of anyone trying to find their great work, or really to get more specific about it, right?
Yeah. Well, very specific about who they are and how they effectively accomplish their goals. So vision is about, what do you want, right? Television or scientific experimentation or whatever, right? Like, I want to build a nonprofit. That's vision.
Right.
The question of, like, there are 5 people, all of them wanted to create a veterans nonprofit. That how are they going to get there, and the steps that are really going to work with them, and the productivity hacks that change their lives versus the ones that fall super flat, are very personal and specific. And that's what we call self-expertise. It's like, who are you? Are you the kind of person who needs to get up and get to it as early as possible in the day because your hours of greatness are between 4 and 8 a.m.? Or are you one of these people who I cannot even imagine being, who are like, it's 10 o'clock and they wake right up and their creativity's flowing and they're up until 2 a.m. Like, it does not help that person who's a night owl to be forced into an early morning routine. It just doesn't work.
Right.
And when you're doing your great work, you need your best thinking available to you as often as possible. And there's all kinds of things that you can develop self-expertise about: time of day, how you like to collaborate, how you like to use, what are you going to do with a to-do list? Would the great work journals work for you or not?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different options out there. And one of the things that makes me the most annoyed is these high performance productivity people who are like, you need to do every single aspect of my 17-point system in order to be very productive. And it's like, I know that's not true because I'm very productive and I only use bits and pieces of them because I found my own formula of success. And I know it's going to change over time as my life shifts and changes.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways that people can walk through this book and get value and really get to their great work without having to do every single thing. I love it. It's a tremendous resource.
Thank you.
Well, this is obviously in my wheelhouse. This is when I see a great book about great work, I'm enchanted.
Oh, thank you.
But it's interesting too, that you really did get to the heart of a lot of these things. So I can't encourage people enough to pick this book up, because it is a great resource for anyone who is trying to figure these things out. Or maybe you thought you had it all figured out and you're ready for the next thing and you want to take some new steps. And as you said, as a developmentalist, no one's ever static. We're always growing, right? So tell us, so you said something about your students and teaching. Are you teaching these days?
I do. I teach at Hunter College in the School of Education.
Ah.
Yeah. I do that alongside my coaching business. And the writing and what have you that I'm doing, speaking. But my time at Hunter is spent teaching teacher candidates their psychology classes. So most teacher candidates have between 1 and 3 psychology classes very early on in their teacher certification programs. And I think of it as my responsibility to get them to really wake up and understand that there are human beings sitting in front of you. And what does it mean to be a human being, specifically at this age, whatever age they're teaching. So if they're teaching adolescence, we talk about the massive identity fracturing that happens during adolescence and how they, you never get to teach a partial person. You're always teaching the whole person. So if you don't understand the kinds of identity work that they're doing, especially if you're working with people who are of a different like race or sexual orientation or socioeconomic status from you, you're teaching that part of them too. And you need to be able to do that with sensitivity and understanding. And when they're teaching younger kids, the same is true. It's just they're not identity fracturing in elementary school. They're instead building up their understanding of themselves as contributors, as industrious, as capable, as they're building self-esteem.
Right.
So we talk about those things in the classes, and I really like it. I think urban teachers are the heroes of our time, and they're the saviors of our future, because our solutions are not going to be coming from the same kinds of minds that created the problems. They're going to be coming from the people who have really lived with the consequences of the choices we've made as a species. And we need those kids brought up, taught up, capable, confident, ready to change the world.
Wow. So you're reaching these emerging teachers, and then you have coaching clients. Who are the people that you coach? Who are your?
Yeah. So some of them are teachers, because I always say I coach accidental entrepreneurs, which is to say people who were just trying to help and they woke up one day in a business and they just don't even know what to do with themselves. They don't know how to articulate. They're often experts, people who find that they're talking to people and people aren't really following what they're saying because the expert hasn't yet done the work to figure out how to translate what they're saying into words regular people can understand. Or, they can be consultants. They're often coaches. They're sometimes therapists. They're often creative people. So people who have written books, or they want to be speakers, or are speakers. And they want to have built-in business systems, so that I think a lot of experts find themselves very, very busy, but not really seeing business gains from the work that they're doing. So it's a little bit of marketing and sales, and a whole lot of how do you communicate in a way that people can really understand you. So I help people think through their ideas and then turn those ideas into what I like to call boomerangs. So if you send something out into the world, is it going to come back to your business, or is it just going to evaporate into the ether? So I work with people for 6 months or a year, and typically they feel like they're business people at the end of it. They go from being like unexpected, kind of resistant to the idea, to, I see the space I'm in. It wasn't where I intended to be, but it's cool and I like it, and there's opportunities here. And then they get to really benefit from their great expertise.
So you help people get clear about their message and what they're trying to put out there. When you said marketing and sales, I'm thinking, but where does that come from?
Yeah. So yes, messaging is part of it, because sometimes the biggest barrier to them, whatever it is they're trying to do, like often they're trying to get clients. So my old tagline used to be, I help you get more clients and make more money. Like when I was, less in the sort of more hyper, like that was like any service provider. Now I talk a little bit more about expertise, because a lot of the people I work with are just sort of like experts in their fields. And so that particular person needs more messaging work than other people do, because we call it like, it's sort of like the curse of understanding, right? You know it so well, and you think everybody else understands it. So you're talking to them up here and they're still like, I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of work with experts in particular to help them kind of remember what it was like to be a novice.
Right. Right.
But then they need to understand very basic business premises that when you come out of academia or nonprofit, you don't understand how, like, what is really a lead? How do you create inbound leads? How do you actually figure out if that person wants to work with you? And then how do you offer them your services so they can agree to work with you? They're very basic, but we talk about marketing and social and blogs and videos as a way to kind of exist in people's fields, because they don't even know you exist. They can't agree to work with you. And then there's a whole set of skills around getting these systems in place so that when people think about working with you, it's easy for them to know how to do it. And then there's the question of, this is sort of the last of the Mohicans. It's like the last stand. Are you going to open your mouth and say, are you interested in working with me to help you do this? People have problems at different ratios, but almost everybody has at least one problem with each of these three sort of areas.
Right.
When they fell into business.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, wow. Wow. So you have a lot of business expertise you're also able to share then. And in your speaking, who are your audiences?
So great work as a concept is right now really resonating with universities. The universities have had a terrible pandemic. Online learning did not help college students feel like they belong, like they want to get involved, like they can do great work on campus, in class, and in their careers. So I'm doing a lot with student engagement speaking right now in colleges to help students kind of remember who they are, why they're here, and what's possible for them. The same kind of thing, because of the Great Resignation, is resonating with corporate environments where we want your company is going to do better if the people there feel like they're able to do their great work at work. And so some of that is helping the employees understand what the great work is. And some of that is talking about leading for great work. Like, how can you as a manager help your team members articulate their great work and then help them to develop it. And then you get much better engagement and, importantly, much better retention.
Great. Wow. You're all over the place.
I am busy, and it's all very germane. It's all the same message. At the heart of it is you can be who you want to be. If you're an accidental entrepreneur, you can do that. If you're a student who wants to teach urban kids and you just are really kind of daunted by that, I can help you.
Yeah.
If you are, like a team that's trying to figure out retention, I'm not going to be able to help you if the way you want to do that isn't by helping people become the fullest versions of themselves.
Right.
But if that's the path you want to take, I can help you.
Yeah. So did we miss anything here? We've got...
Oh, geez, I'm tired. I don't know. I mean, I have a podcast called Unleashing Your Great Work.
Okay.
Would love to have you on my podcast.
You got me.
Yeah. And that's where I talk to people doing great work so that we can learn from each other about the kinds of struggles and joys and ups and downs. Because you need a community when you're trying to do courageous work that matters the most to you.
Absolutely. Oh, well, we will have all of this in the show notes. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, but I see all the connections. It's brilliant, in my opinion. And I can't thank you enough for being here today.
My pleasure.
And so if people want to find you, what's the best way for them to do that, Amanda?
Well, amandacrowell.com is my website, and it's all there. So on the coaching page, you can read all about accidental entrepreneurs and the way that I help them. I have a very small cadre of coaching clients, just no more than 8 ever at a time, because I do work.
Right.
So for the right, for the right client, that's one way to sort of get to more. But to find out if I'm a good fit for you as a coach, I really do recommend watching the TED Talk and reading the book, because I am a very specific kind of coach. Like, I have a very specific perspective, and I want to work with the people who are doing the courageous work to get the work that matters the most to them out in the world. And you can find out if that's you and maybe learn as much as you need by watching the TED Talk and reading the book.
Great. Well, we'll have links to all of that in the show notes.
Yay.
And just want to ask you a quick question. Hopefully this is a quick question. If you had to give someone one piece of advice about making a transition, they were considering what's next for them, what would be a key piece of advice you would give them?
I would say this: transitions are hard.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to go through a difficult transition, why not do the work and have the courage to transition into what you really want to do? I find that people try to do these bridge transitions. Well, I've done this before, so I'll do it again. Did you like it? No. Then maybe that's not the thing for you. And it takes a lot of courage. But I would say if there's something calling to you from the inside, maybe give it a chance.
Thank you. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was so enlightening and so interesting, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Amanda Crowell. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her background and professional transitions. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 185. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my new book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon Worldwide, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Amanda, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.